couple of months ago, I reached out to our good friend Colin, who is planting Freedom Church. When are you planting Freedom Church? In March of 2026, so it's coming up. He's been a part of our church, kind of doing his church planting residency for several months now. And when he's not speaking at other churches, he is here. He comes early. He sets up. He helps tear down. He helps. He has experience in kids ministry, and so he's been helping Betty do some different planning and some consultation stuff with that. And he's a great guy, great communicator, and all of those things. And so a couple of months ago, I reached out to him, and I asked if he would be a part of our Summer in the Psalm series, and so he agreed to it. And so it was for this Sunday, and I did not know that it was going to be our last Sunday in this building. But when I found out, and then I saw on the calendar that Colin was speaking, I said, you know what, Lord, I think there's something that you want to speak through him to our congregation today. And so he's going to be sharing God's word today. He's continuing our Summer in the Psalm series, and he's going to be bringing it home today at our last service at PS 153. We're going to be investing in his church plant. I've already decided, and I'm just going to state it publicly, that he's going to be a part of our Heart and Soul initiatives in October. And so we're going to be sowing into his church plant because we love church planters in here. We understand that church planting is the most difficult thing that someone can ever do, especially in this city. And so we want to put our arms around people and champion them as they're doing what God calls them to do. And we have a big need here in this city. Okay, we are an unchurched city, and so we need more planters moving into this city or being raised up from within this city to plant churches. And so, Colin, I want to invite you to come up. We're so grateful for you, and we believe that you have a word that God has put on your heart to share with us today. Amen.
Thank you. Good morning, church. How are we doing today? Wow, that was very depressing. How are we doing today? My goodness. I know I was excited to hear Stephen speak today too, but you got like the B team coming in. So I'm going to do my best for you today, okay? Is that all right with you? All right. I feel so honored just even to be able to be here on one of the last days in this space. And I feel honored especially just because it's summer. And man, I've been out to New York almost a year now. And this has been the most chaotic summer I've ever seen, weather-wise, ever. We hit like record highs, right? Isn't that correct? See, this is very different for me because where I grew up was in Pittsburgh, where the weather is so, it changes probably every 5 minutes. And I'm not trying to exaggerate that. One of my favorite memories that happened in the summer, this happened when I was about 8 years old, was we had these days where it would start off, and I kid you not, you'd walk outside and you'd see frostbite on the grass, okay? And then somehow, in a matter of 3 hours, it would boost up to about 87 degrees, and then it would do these half-hour moments where it would be raining, and then it would be sunny, and then it would be rainy, and then it would be sunny. We joked that in Pittsburgh you could hit all 4 seasons in just a day, okay? And that's how my summers were growing up. And my mom had some very specific rules for me. I don't know, does anybody in here have moms that had very strict parents? Okay? You knew there were some things that they told you to do, and you never understood why until you found out exactly why, okay? Yeah, that was one of my favorite memories in the summer was we had one of these days. Weather would change. It would all of a sudden be very cold, and then it would be hot, and then it would be rainy, and then it would be cold, and then there would be fireworks, and then it would be cold. All right, so it was just crazy. Well, I remember this specific day because my mom told us, hey, in our house we had this very, very big hill, then this long yard, and then we had these woods. And my mom told me, because I'm 8 years old, don't go back out into the woods. And I was like, okay, cool. So I waited until there were people over at the house. And then what I did was I waited until she was distracted, because we all know if you're a kid, you know exactly like the moments whenever your parent gets distracted. You knew the right moment to ask them things or when not to ask them things. So I waited until she was distracted, put my boots on, and went out into the woods. And it was sunny, and it was beautiful. And then what do you know, in a few moments, all of a sudden it started raining. And in that moment, I was like, this is so cool. I'm excited about it. The issue was I wasn't familiar enough with the woods. I didn't understand what it was like. And I realized if you grew up in this city, let me explain what it's like to grow up in the suburbs in the middle of nowhere. People literally thought I was Amish once I moved out here, okay? I promise you, this is such a weird thing because what I didn't realize was whenever you go deep into the woods, there's most likely a river back there. What I didn't know was whenever you get close to the river, you actually start to feel it in the ground. Here's what I mean by this, is you can start taking steps and you realize, like, this is a little bit more mushy, okay? And then the closer and closer you get to a river, it's muddy. Well, guess what happens when it's raining? It gets more muddy. And whenever you're closer and closer to the river, all of a sudden you feel like your feet are sinking in because they are. And as an 8-year-old that had zero muscle mass at all, I'm trying my best to go deeper and deeper because I'm like, this is so cool, when all of a sudden I get stuck. And I didn't realize, wow, when I'm closer to the river, this happens. I also didn't realize the more you try to struggle, the deeper you start to go. I also didn't realize that whenever you get your foot out, it feels like you're getting like a plunger unstuck from something, and it would catapult you forward. So in a matter of moments, I am off. I'm standing, and then I'm just falling face down into the mud. So then I'm figuring out, okay, I have to now get from this spot probably half a mile down from my house, back up to my house, and I have to sell this bit as if I wasn't just out in the woods. And I mean, it was so apparent all over me. So, as it would happen, rain stops, sun comes up, and now the mud's starting to stick. It's not just like wet, like it's dry, okay? It's awful, and I'm figuring out, how do I do this? So I go back up to my house. And there, I don't know if you've ever had this experience where whenever you go home and your parents just there waiting because they know that they raised an idiot, like, because that's essentially what it was. My mom's just on the back porch, just arms folded. Anybody ever seen this look before? You know that look, and it's the same thing. I'm not mad. I'm just disappointed. Like, thank you. That makes it better. Thank you, okay? And so there I am with all the mud, all the stuff. It was awful. All because I didn't know where I was going. All right, here's the whole point of what this story is. Really what I'm trying to get at is a point of often we don't really know where we're standing, okay? And there's a specific psalm I want to look at today because there's somebody that did understand where they were standing at. They did understand their context. They did understand. And I want to read that psalm with you. That psalm's going to be Psalm 84, and we're going to read through just the first 4 verses of this because it's so beautiful and it's so special. So Psalm 84, it starts off saying this: "How lovely is your dwelling place, O Lord of heaven's armies. I long, yes, I faint with longing to enter the courts of the Lord. With my whole being, body, and soul, I will shout joyfully to the living God. Even the sparrow finds a home, and the swallow builds her nest and raises her young at a place near your altar. O Lord of heaven's armies, my King and my God, what joy for those who can live in your house, always singing your praises." And we're going to dive into this a little bit. What I want you to understand is what's going on in the context of somebody who's writing this psalm, okay? Because what I'm seeing here, and whenever I was studying through this, more than anything else, this psalm is somebody writing, saying, I want to be so close to God. I mean, I'm just looking at it. And the way he's writing, it almost sounds like there's a gap, like there's some distance, okay? This right here is actually accurate. Because whenever we understand, this is the Psalms. The Psalms are written in the Old Testament, and what we're going to look at is some other stuff in the New Testament. But understand this, whenever we're looking at the difference between the Old Testament and the New Testament, there's a giant gap in the relationship that people had with God. It wasn't as if they had the same relationship that you and I have, or the ability to have the same relationship that we're able to have with God today. So when we're reading Psalm 84, we're reading something that is very, very dated. I think it's helpful if we understand the full context of this person who's writing, looking, saying, I just want to be close to God. What is really helpful is there was another writer who actually breaks this down even more. to help us understand. Can we do just a little bit of Bible study together? You guys, I know you're awake today. Can we do some Bible study? Okay, all right, perfect. All right, we're going to be looking at Hebrews chapter 9. Hebrews chapter 9. If you've ever read through Hebrews, this is one of my favorite books of the Bible, because if you never understood the Old Testament, Hebrews basically goes through and gives you all the context you need. So, Hebrews chapter 9, verses 1 through 3, it says, that first covenant between God and Israel had regulations. Everybody say regulations. Regulations for worship and a place of worship here on earth. There were 2 rooms in that tabernacle. In the first room were a lampstand, a table, and sacred loaves of bread on the table. This room was called the holy place. Then there was a curtain, and behind the curtain was the second room called the most holy place. What we're getting a picture of is what this writer for Psalm 84 was talking about. We're getting this picture because it wasn't like things are the way that they are today. This writer was essentially in a context where if he wanted to get close to God, there was a tabernacle he had to do it through. If there was this place that he wanted to try to get close, he wanted to be able to pray, talk, and have a relationship with God, he had to go to this tabernacle because that is where the presence of God was. The fact that God wasn't in the same way that he is today, and we're going to break this down even more, but what I want you to understand was there was a huge gap in the relationship. It was almost as if this writer had this long-distance relationship with God when he wrote Psalm 84, and we don't have to have that same thing. Let's continue on, Hebrews 9, 6 through 8. When these things were all in place, the priests regularly entered the first room as they performed their religious duties, but only the high priest ever entered the most holy place. The most holy place was kept behind this curtain. There was only one person that would enter this, okay? And only once a year. And he always offered blood for his own sins and for the sins the people had committed in ignorance. By these regulations, the Holy Spirit revealed that the entrance to the most holy place was not freely open as long as the tabernacle and the system it represented were still in use. Okay, let's continue on for verses 11 and 12 in this. So Christ has now become the high priest over all the good things that have come. He has entered the greater, more perfect tabernacle in heaven, which was not made by human hands and is not part of this created world. With his own blood, not the blood of goats and calves, he entered the most holy place once for all time and secured our redemption forever. Understand this. Psalm 84 was written by somebody who wasn't even able to experience the presence of God. And he had this love. He had this desire. He was looking at it from a distance going, I just want to be close to Jesus. My heart's going crazy because I'm seeing this reality of this relationship that I could have, and I want that so much. The reality we live in today is what he never had. The reality we get to live in is one where we get to come into a spot where at any place, at any point in time, we are able to experience exactly what Hebrews talks about, the most holy place. But I don't know about you, but I don't typically have the same heart of that psalmist. The way I talk about it, the way I talk about being close to Jesus, I don't have that same desire all the time. I don't treat it with that same level of passion. I sometimes feel like, if anything, I'm fairly lazy, as if I don't know where I'm standing, as if that moment whenever I was in the mud and I'm like, wow, I think I might be close to something. I might be close to a river. There's almost moments where I think we don't realize all the time that we're close to Jesus. I think for a lot of us, whenever we hear this word presence, we're not even the presence of God. It's a word that for a lot of us is very familiar to us, and because of that, we've lost the significance of it. It's a word that we don't really treat with that much. And let me just for a moment tell you about this, because what presence mean is first that God is a real being, that God himself is actually true, that God himself is a real person. And I know it's really easy to talk about God, but presence gives us the opportunity to know God. The fact that he is in a real place. And I need you to understand what we just read is that God's presence now is not limited. What we read was that there were limitations on why God's presence was not able to be expressed and why people couldn't be as close. They couldn't have this relationship with him. But now we understand there are no limitations. There's none whatsoever. There's no situation in which someone is too messed up, too dirty, too whatever, that Jesus wouldn't want to be present. There is no son or daughter that has gone so far away from Jesus that he wouldn't want to show up. There is no marriage that is so messed up that when Jesus steps into it and he is present in it, there can't be healing for years and years of pain. What this means is that God is active when we talk about the presence of God. Here's my concern, though, is that we have accepted an understanding at times based on ignorance and shallowness in which God's presence comes down to a feeling rather than a reality. We treat it at times like it's the weather, you know? Man, like I really felt this. I could feel God's presence. Well, what about the moments when Jesus is still there, but I didn't feel it? Is it possible that we have lost our understanding, and because of that, someone who wasn't even able to experience the same thing as us had an even greater desire for it because he saw maybe just being close to Jesus, maybe just being close to God would change everything. That when it comes down to the desires of my heart, I could put all of these different things, but what I really want more than anything else is to be close to Jesus. Today, if we could, I want to help us capture some of the heart and the passion of the person who wrote that psalm. I want to help us get back to some of the core of this so that we're able to find ourselves whenever we are thinking, I don't know if I feel it, I don't know if I see it, but I know that there's a real God and I'm in his presence right now because I'm close to him. And not just that we might be able to fight through some of the feelings of disbelief, but that we could get to a spot where we're saying, I just want to be close to Jesus. I need to be close to him. I need it. This psalmist was literally saying, there's birds that are going to be close to God. I want to be just like that. I want to have that same level of hunger and desire. So here's the main focus that I want to carry with us today. Is that I can focus on a place that Jesus is in or the person that I can have a relationship with. We can focus on a place or we can focus on a person when it comes down to this. So I have a few questions that I want to carry with us as we walk through this today. And none of these, please hear me, are things that, there's some messages that I know would be really easy that because I'm up on a platform, it sounds like I've got this together. These are things that as I was even prepping with this message, I was like, I have to check myself on this too. This was a learning experience for me as well, to bring myself to a spot that I could look deeper and ask, is this true for me? How do I respond to this? And in understanding the difference between a place and a person whenever it comes down to the presence of God, let me ask this question first. Do we treat Jesus like he's only present in specific places? Do we treat him like he's only present in specific places? I'm not asking about what you believe. I'm asking about your behavior. One of my favorite psychiatrists always has this saying that behavior is a language. So what does your behavior say? Do you act like you're in the presence of God when you're at work? Or do you act like, no, the presence of God was there whenever I was reading my Bible in the morning. It was there whenever I prayed, but now I'm in this different place, and it's hard to accept a reality that God could show up at my workplace. It's so hard because are we gonna start worship? Do I need to just play worship music at work? Do I need to start lifting my? God is able to be present in so many different situations outside of what our understanding of it might be. You might not realize it, but people can always tell whenever you've been around Jesus. Whenever it comes down to the presence of God, similar to whenever I fell down in the mud, it was apparent that I was there. I couldn't wash that stuff off. When I went back, people were able to see, oh, you're not in the woods anymore, but you have something on you now. Can I tell you that whenever you leave this place today, it is clear to people that there's something on you. It is clear to people that you were in the presence of a very real and a very amazing God. Whether or not they will acknowledge that is irrelevant. It's a fact. Whether or not people are able to identify it, there's a reason why people will look at you and they will say, there's just something different. There's some reason why, it's not like you're even better at your job, or it's not like you act different. It's because you are around Jesus. It's because you are in his presence that something changed. And let me tell you this. You don't just get around the presence of Jesus whenever you are in this building. What I love is that there were things that happen in this building, and in the next one, there's going to be even greater things that occur. Because the presence of God wasn't limited to this place in the first place, okay? We brought that here. We were able to see as we had this amazing time with Jesus here that there was something that went outward. What if the presence of God wasn't meant to be something that was just located for one spot, but that we took it other places? Let me ask this. Do you act like when you come to church, it's the only place you'll actually encounter Jesus? Is that what your behavior says? I'm not asking, again, what you believe respectfully. I'm asking, when you're at home, do you have the same level of faith to believe? When you're at home, do you pick up your Bible? Whenever you are on your commute, do you still have this sense of hope and faith that God's going to show up and God's going to do something? Do we believe that we can have encounters with Jesus outside of this place? Because what I need you to understand, at its core, presence is just an indicator that Jesus is here. That's all. And I don't mean to reduce that, because we obviously serve a transcendent God, and we could spend ages talking about the transcendence of who he is, but I need you to understand as well with that, there is also an imminent personal aspect of his presence that I need us to focus on today. Because in that we see, at any place that I'm at, I can absolutely believe and accept that God is here. Because, understand this, the presence of God is an invitation to make things personal rather than artificial. We saw, if you read through the Bible, what happened to people whenever they never got to have these moments with the presence of God. What happened was they treated things like they really praised the rules of the Bible. They praised all of the laws that were in it, but whenever it came down to the relationship they could have with God, there was just something that was artificial. It wasn't real. But the presence of God now is something that we all get to experience. Here's my second question for you. Are we overly concerned with how we look in his presence? Are we overly concerned with how we look in his presence? Can I just be honest? Can I just be honest with you for a second, church? There were so many times growing up as a teenager where I was struggling with a porn addiction, trying to struggle forward in my relationship with Jesus. And every time I would slip up and relapse, I would come into the presence of God, very much similar to somebody that was trying to get back together with their ex, okay? Like, please, I'll do my best. I'll never have this happen again. And what happened was I was so concerned every time that I walked into the presence of God about my image, about my presentation. I know there's a lot of us that you woke yourself up today, or there might have even been times whenever you thought, like, I don't have the energy for church. Has anybody ever felt that before? We felt like, come on, like I'm going to have to pull up my smile, make myself look all nice. I can't be too real. I can't be too honest. Like it's church. Like you understand, like the power of what church is the fact that we're in the presence of a saving God. That's not how we treat it so much of the time. There's a lot of us that have skipped church, skipped reading our Bible, skipped praying, skipped out on being close to Jesus because we misunderstood the presence and thought about our presentation in it, thought about how we looked, our image, and because of that, we thought, there's no way, there's no chance that God would ever want me. That I've got to have this together before I step into church. I've got to have my attitude together before I step into church. I don't have the right outfit to step in church. I'm not going to look as good as those other people. I have to. Comes down to our presentation. Can I recap just for a moment the good news of what brought all of us here today? Your presentation doesn't matter. Our presentation could never matter, because what we even read in Hebrews was that someone else's presentation, Jesus, was the only one that matters. It's the only reason you're in this place today. It's the only reason that we're able to lift our hands and worship. The only reason we get to stand in the presence of a living God is because of his presentation. And the second we act like it's about our presentation is when we dismiss the entire gospel. Is when we say, I understand what you think you did was enough, Jesus, but actually I have to have my stuff together. I understand that you took that whole beating. You put yourself up on a cross. You took the weight of all the sin, but I have to get my stuff together. The Old Testament shows us just how far we can get based off our presentation. And what we just read in Hebrews was it wasn't enough. It wasn't enough the entire time. And so because of that, that's why we look at such an amazing person like Jesus, who was able to step in for us and say, what you could never do, I'll do. What you could never be, the type of thing you could never live up to, the type of perfection that you'll never be able to hit. Let me be that person for you. Let me stand in the gap so that whenever you're wondering, am I able, am I good enough? Jesus says, yeah, you are. You're good enough to be in my presence, because there's no way you could be bad enough. You don't understand how good and how great of a God that I am. There's nothing that you could do. There's no presentation. There's no image. There's nothing that you could do that would be so bad that would say, nah, I need you to have it a little bit more together before you come into my presence. You know, as I was praying for you this morning, the Holy Spirit really put something on my heart that I want to encourage you with. Because I think that some of you have never felt like there was a space or a place that you were good enough for. That you've had to dress a certain way, you've had to talk a certain way. In some instances, you've paid financially so that you could get some type of validation, and still it wasn't what you were looking for. And because of that, you've come to church focusing on the presence of other people rather than on the presence of God, of what other people would think of you rather than God. And because of that, you felt so uncomfortable in church. And I believe God is saying this to you today. My presence is the safest place for you. That's not typically how we treat it. We treat it like, I have to be on my best to be in your presence. My presence is the safest place. His presence is the safest place for my mess. His presence is the safest place for my crap. His presence is the safest place for me to be vulnerable and to share everything that's going on, because his presence is really the place where we come home when we become recentered. His presence is the place that you have been looking and saying, I just want that safe place that I can be myself. That's his presence. That place that you've been looking for, saying, you know, maybe I could find it if I dated this person. Maybe I could find it if I got this paycheck. Maybe I could find it in this job, or if I got into this group. No, it's his presence. It's being with him, that I'm not just safe from the bad things, but I'm also safe to grow and become all that I can be. It's his presence, and there's nowhere else that I'll be able to find it. This is what this psalm teaches us, is that the presence of Jesus doesn't require perfection. Presence of Jesus does not require perfection. As so much of the time we would want to do that. We would want to treat it like that. It doesn't require perfection. Here's the last question I want to ask you. Am I afraid of what might happen in the presence of God? I put this question last, I know some of us can be afraid of, okay, in the presence of God, is this going to be, okay, we're gonna take an offering call and everybody's going to lock the doors, okay? I'm not talking about that. That's not what I'm talking about. What I mean is this. There's times whenever it comes down to the presence of God that we are afraid of what God might say. Because what we read about in the Bible, this is clear. The presence of God is dangerous. It was dangerous in the Old Testament, and it's dangerous in the New Testament. And I want to be clear on this. The presence of God is dangerous to sinfulness. It's dangerous to sin in the same way that medicine is dangerous to a cold. But we often think about it like, oh, this is gonna get me, okay? I've seen in churches before where we start to talk about things like, man, like God wants to share a word with you, and you're like, I don't know what God's going to say. Most likely it's that I'm not doing enough, that he's mad at me about this. I'm pretty sure if God could speak to me really clearly, this is what he'd say. If I was in the presence of God, I'm pretty sure. There's a level of fear that we all have. And here's the issue on this, is the devil's really twisted a lot of what can happen in the presence of God, especially revolving around this thing called conviction. Can we all say conviction for a sec? Yeah. The presence of God has this way of doing something that we don't talk about enough, in that it convicts. I've had moments when I've entered the presence of God feeling lazy, and then I leave feeling motivated. I've had times where I enter feeling anxious, and then I leave feeling anointed. Times whenever I walk in feeling depressed, and then I feel deployed to step out. This is what I mean by this whenever I talk about conviction, because conviction we often think about in a legal term of convicted of a crime, rather than in the other term that we'll use it of, I feel so convicted that I want to go do this now. That's what happens, and it's dangerous to the sinfulness in us. But oftentimes it's uncomfortable. It's it's almost uncomfortable to the extent of, if you've ever been in the moment before where you've been watching a movie and you never noticed anything was wrong with that movie, and then you watched that movie with your mom, and you realized Titanic was the worst choice you could possibly think of. You should have never seen that with your mother. You didn't realize how bad it was. And then you're like, oh my goodness. That's what conviction with God is like at times. All of a sudden, he's like, really? You don't think you can do better than that? You deserve somebody who can treat you better than that. Why are you dating them? There's moments whenever you enter the presence of God, and God will highlight to you, be like, hey, I want to help you with your finances. Do you even know what your finances are? Why don't we get that organized? Okay, all right. I know that you have been praying and asking me to heal your body. Can we talk about your diet? This is what happened. And I mean, it's pretty practical in the presence of God sometimes. These are the things. That's dangerous to your sinfulness, though. That's dangerous to parts of you. But you understand, that's dangerous to your sinfulness, but that's exactly what you need. That is the exact thing. It is not going to protect the parts of me that I'm holding on to that are really hurting me. Because whenever I have pride, when I enter the presence of God, he'll tell me. When I have a sin pattern, he'll tell me. Whenever I have bitterness and resentment, he'll tell me. Whenever I have things that I've been hiding, things that I didn't know about, the presence of God is going to be the only thing that will expose it. There's things that happen to you years and years ago that you've never even been able to deal with. There's not going to be a therapist that's going to be able to dig it up. There's not going to be anything that no book that you're going to read that all of a sudden is going to highlight it. It's only in the presence of God that we actually find a deep, rich healing that is dangerous to so many generational things that have held us and our families down for years. That only happens when I get close and face to face with Jesus. And when I read through this Bible and I read through the tone of Jesus whenever he's having these moments, he doesn't stand there yelling at us. He doesn't stand there getting mad saying, how could you? I'm so mad at you. I'm so angry. I love the words that he said to a woman caught in adultery. He said, I want you to go and I want you to leave your sin here. That's what happens when we enter the presence of God. That's what happens whenever you get to pray and you're home later today and you're going like, yeah, maybe I should try this, okay? It's a moment whenever you feel this rich love that's there because you're face to face with someone who literally died for you. And he's saying, right now, I'm living for you and I want you to live with me. It's this amazing moment that happens. But what I want you to understand is this, that in Hebrews it kept going. So Hebrews 9:13 and 14. Understand this. These are the last two verses I want to read through with you. Because it says, under the old system, everybody say old system, the blood of goats and bulls and the ashes of a heifer could cleanse people's bodies from ceremonial impurity. Catch these words. Just think. Everybody say just think. How much more the blood of Christ will purify our consciences from sinful deeds so that we can worship the living God. For by the power of the eternal Spirit, Christ offered himself to God as a perfect sacrifice for our sins. This is what we see whenever we get to be closer in the presence of God. It's this last point here. The presence protects the real and true me. Can I just speak prophetically for a second for you? There's some of you that have not seen the truest extent of who you are yet. There is an image and a person that God has been working on from before you were born. And whenever you get deeper and closer into a relationship with God in His presence, that's when you're going to get to see it. You're not going to see it by getting exactly what you want, how you want it. You see it whenever you submit yourself to saying, I believe that you're real, and I believe that you're true, and I believe that when I am close to you, there's something that's unique that occurs because it only happens in the presence of God. What I'd like for us to do just to end this time together, it's interesting is they put this specifically only in the NLT translation. And that verse we just read, whenever it talks about how much more will the blood of Christ do for us, it puts two words in front of that. It says, just think. Oftentimes, whenever we're talking about the presence of God, the response is one of, we have to be loud and we have to be vocal. What I want to propose to you today is another spiritual practice that I'd like for all of us just to engage with for a moment, which is one summed up in those two words of just think. The presence of God does not require anything of you. Being close to Jesus does not require anything of you. What if we took just a minute and we sat just thinking about the fact that I'm loved, I don't have to be perfect. That's not about my presentation. It's not even about a certain place. Right here and right now, Jesus is here. He's looking at each and every one of you, calling you his son and his daughter, and there's no part of this that he's asking you to do anything more other than to just look right back at him and accept the fact that he loves you. There's nothing you have to do. What if we just took a minute, sat, and think? Can we do this for a second? Right now? Can we all just close your eyes? Just so you can focus up. I just want you to think about the fact that there's nothing you have to do right now. God's right here in front of you. He loves you. He's so happy that you're here. He's so happy that he gets these moments with you. I'm going to stop talking for a moment because I just want you to take a moment with him just to think, just to acknowledge the fact that he's present and he loves you. All right, you guys can open up your eyes for a sec. Amazing how calming and peaceful a moment like that can be. There's nothing we have to do. And that right there, understand, that took so much faith for you to do. That's not any less important than the other moments. And oftentimes, whenever we're thinking through, okay, I gotta get myself together. I gotta really, each morning you can wake up and do exactly what we just did. You can take that moment and you don't have to strive. You don't have to be something that you're not. You can just rest in the fact that you are his son and his daughter and that he is so, so happy to be able to spend these moments with you. These moments in his presence can change so much because the moments whenever we're feeling super anxious, whenever we're feeling super overwhelmed and we don't have words to say, that's okay. We can just sit in his presence, knowing that whenever we sit and we are close like this, think about right back what it was to the beginning. We are in the most holy place with our God, a place that psalmist wrote about, saying, I long to be in this place that we all just were able to experience together. That moment, this point in time, this is what that person was longing to be in. We get this. At any moment, at any time, at any place. Can we all just stand as we close this time together? Because as much as we're able to have some time where we're able to sit and just acknowledge the presence of God, I think it's important that we don't walk out of this moment too quickly. I think it's important that we're able to stay in this. So whether in these moments right now as we continue back into a time of worship, whether you're spending this not even just talking but just absorbing the fact that you're right here in front of God, or whether you need to acknowledge this and you need to say some things out loud. Maybe for some of you, this is a moment where you need to be really real and you need to be really vulnerable and you need to say, I'm done hiding. I need to be really clear. I need to lean on my church family and stop acting like I'm something that I'm not, and instead start to open up and say, this is who I am. I need help with this. This is your moment. This is your time to be able to respond. This is really for you to talk instead of us to talk, but for you to have your moment to respond back to God. So as we continue on with this, I want you to just take this time, acknowledge the fact of how close He is, how much He loves you, and the fact that we get to sit now in the presence of God.